Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Labor is supporting this subordinate legislation confirmation and validation bill. Why? Because this is the high point of John Key's bold and energetic efforts to build a brighter future for New Zealand. It is the sharp end, sir, this bill, of National's program to transform the New Zealand economy and tackle the big issues. For anyone who's just tuned in to this debate, my apologies. And I want to explain, sir, that the subordinate legislation confirmation and validation bill is a bill that will prevent the lapse or expiry of a number of other bits of legislation that have sunset clauses built into them. And it deals with such things as the Animal Products Act, the Commodity Levies Act, the Customs and Excise Act, the New Zealand Superannuation and Retirement Income Act, Road User Charges, and the War Pensions Act. And what it does essentially is that it rolls over levies, rates of taxation, and rates of payment. So I wanted to follow up really on the comments of a couple of other colleagues who have talked about road user charges, which is one of the bits of legislation, subordinate legislation, that is covered by this bill. And it's worth noting, sir, that as well as rolling over the current set of road user charges that this bill does, at this time the government is actively pursuing raising road user charges and raising the petrol excise as part of a mad scramble to try and find alternative and additional ways to fund its state highway building program. It's announced that Transmission Gully is going to be funded through a PPP, which, as has been stated, is really just an elaborate way and an expensive way, I should add, of borrowing over a period of time. It's a way of front-ending a huge piece of roading expenditure without having to fund it up front out of the National Land Transport Fund. The government is legislating, as well as making it easier to do PPPs, it is legislating to make it easier to bring in toll roads. And all of this, sir, is an elaborate strategy to front-end the biggest motorway building program this country has ever seen. And nobody would object to that, sir, if those mega motorway projects were seen to be good value. But I think people do object to their road user charges and their petrol excise going on projects, a number of which are white elephants that will be a weight around this country's neck for a long time to come. And many of the RONs, sir, are such poor quality, and I raised the example of the Kapiti Expressway, which was shown recently in a leaked report produced by the engineering firm Becker to have a benefit-cost ratio of 0.2, meaning that at a cost of about $600 million, it would take that project 30 years to deliver an economic benefit equivalent to about $120 million. And that is an indication, sir, of the incredibly low-quality spending in the transport portfolio by this government. And I think that people, including the Road Transport Forum, who are not known to be critics of building new roads and motorways, that even the Road Transport Forum recently described the roads of national significance as gold-plated. And when the Road Transport Forum says that motorway projects are gold-plated, then that means, I think, that there is clearly something wrong with them. The other factor that relates to road user charges, and Julianne Gento commented about this, is that revenue from road user charges and petrol excise is falling, sir, and that is putting additional pressure on the National Land Transport Fund and making it more difficult for the government to front-end the building of these massive motorway projects. People are driving less. Traffic volumes have been static, if not falling, for a number of years, 6 years or so, in New Zealand, and it's part of a very well documented international trend that people are driving less. And one of the interesting things about that is that actually the younger generation are driving less. They're choosing to live in downtown urban communities. They rely on the web much more to provide a kind of a sense of community and connectedness now, and the car is no longer this kind of universal symbol of freedom and aspiration, especially in our largest cities. So for all those reasons, people are driving less, and road user charges are generating and are set to generate a much smaller and smaller part of the revenue that we need, the $3 to $4 billion a year that we're accustomed to spending on our transport system. So that raises some real questions, sir. Of course, raises questions about the quality and the value for money of our spending on transport. And it raises for this government and future governments real questions about how we will pay for, how we will generate the revenue for our transport system. And it's clear, I think, particularly when we think about what's likely to happen with a move to more and more electric vehicles, more people travelling by public transport, that diesel and petrol tax are not in the medium term to long term going to be able to generate the revenue that we need. So those questions, I think, should be in the back of our minds in relation to particularly the provision about road user charges in this rather tame and unexciting but nevertheless necessary bill. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Simon O'Connor.